Hello, and welcome to Well-Advised On-Demand Learning, a series brought to you by the Kentucky Advising Academy, an initiative of the Kentucky Council on Post-Secondary Education. I'm one of the KAA advising coordinators here today to guide you through this module. I'm so glad you're here, and thank you for taking the time to learn from this resource and further impact your own post-secondary advising system. Let's get started. When it comes to exploring post-secondary options and career opportunities with students, there are many choices available to them. One of the options they may be considering could be military service. Having some foundational knowledge of military service options, as well as where additional resources can be found, will allow you to support your students to and through this specific post-secondary pathway. Let's start with a brief explanation of the different service options. There are 6 different branches of the military. They are the Army, which also houses the Army National Guard, the Navy, which has no National Guard but does have a reserve, the Marines, also having no National Guard but has a reserve and is one of the smaller branches of service, the Air Force, also housing the Air National Guard, the Coast Guard, which has no reserve and is again one of the smaller branches with very few spots to fill, and lastly, the Space Force. This is the smallest branch with very limited spots to fill and no reserve. In addition to knowing the individual branches, it is also important to know the differences between each service option. If your student has chosen military service as a post-secondary path, you'll want to be able to advise them on the differentiation of service options. Specifically, what is the difference between being enlisted, an officer, or a reserve service member? An enlisted officer is an active duty position and comparable to working a full-time job. These enlistees can be stationed anywhere in the world and in some ways are the blue-collar workers of military service. Enlisted members will have different basic training than officers and usually don't have a completed degree. Officers are enlisted individuals that, in most cases, have to have a college degree. These enlistees will attend a different basic training, which begins immediately after degree completion. And lastly, reserve. Reserve members are more part-time and stationed near their home or school while they are receiving military training, unless they are called into active duty. It's important for your student to know these distinctions for their intended career path and whether their chosen branch or ideal method of service requires a college degree. Regardless of branch, any student interested in pursuing a military service option after high school will be required to take the ASVAB, or the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery. The ASVAB is a standardized test for science, math, and language, taken and used to identify which military careers may be a fit for the student. This test is primarily to determine enlistment ability, assign applicants to military jobs, and used in career exploration. If you have students taking the ASVAB, it's important to encourage them to do their best and not stress, as it's simply a tool to measure developed abilities and help predict future academic and occupational success. Another consideration for students might be choosing an ROTC option at an in-state or out-of-state institution, or perhaps applying to a military academy. An ROTC, or Reserve Officer Training Corps program, is a college program that trains cadets to become commissioned officers in the military. It is usually a 4-year college program that offers scholarships as well as the opportunity to enlist with special ranking upon completion of basic training if certain benchmarks are met. During this time, students also have a military academic advisor to ensure they complete their programming on time or early. A potential bonus to an ROTC program is that if the student decides that the program is not for them, they can quit without penalty of scholarship repayment as long as notification is given prior to their sophomore year of college. A military academy, on the other hand, is very different from an ROTC program. They are usually a 5-year commitment, very rigorous, and similar to 4 years of basic training with a full 21 to 22-hour course or activity load. Attendance to a military academy is by congressional appointment and involves an elaborate application and interview process that should be planned for accordingly. Applying to both military academies, if interested, and ROTC programs will provide a student with more opportunities for success. As you can see, there is a lot to be considered for students you might be advising who are interested in choosing military service as a post-secondary career option. Are you ready for your well-advised challenge on military service? The Kentucky Post-Secondary Advising Framework sets a milestone for all students to have identified a post-secondary plan or pathway by their senior year. And military service is one of those pathways your students can take. We challenge you to create an early awareness of students who hold interest in military service as a post-secondary option. Come up with a way to connect them with a recruiting officer in their field for more information as early as possible. What does that early action or early awareness look like in your post-secondary advising system?